Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to be building fencing friends. Before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about the supplies that we're going to need for this project. So for this project, we're going to need some scissors, a bottle of glue, a rag for glue cleanup, some sandpaper, a sanding block, and a hardware tray. Once you've got all your supplies ready to go, you can go ahead and get out your tools. So I have my toolkit right here. Let's go ahead and open it up and talk about the tools that we're going to need. The first thing that we're going to need is a Phillips head screwdriver, and we're also going to need a 5/16 wrench. That's that little one right here. Once you've got both your tools, you can go ahead and close up your toolkit and get it out of your way. All right, we've got our supplies, we've got our tools. Now we're ready to open up our box and talk about the different materials we're going to find inside. All right, let's go ahead and open up our box and talk about our materials. So to open up our box, I'm going to be using my scissors, and I'm just going to be using them to split the tape here at the top. Now that I've got the box open, let's go ahead and talk about what's inside. The first thing we're going to take out is some packing paper. And we're going to want to open this up to make sure that no little pieces got wrapped up inside. Next, we're going to be taking out this piece. This will be our base. We should have 4 of these dowels. These will be our arm control dowels. We should have 2 skewers, that'll be our swords, 2 shields, two torso pieces, a bag of hardware, which we'll talk about in just a second, and then we've got a bunch of these little pieces that are going to be the different parts of our fencing friends. So let's go ahead and organize them, and then we'll talk about them. You're going to organize them by the different holes that you see drilled into the different sides. This side here is our veneered side, and this side here with the lines through it will be our end grain. So let's go ahead and organize our pieces, and then we'll talk about each one. All right, we've got our pieces all organized, so let's go ahead and talk about each different part. The first one I want to talk about are these pieces here. And you can tell that these are the right pieces because they have a hole right in the center of the veneered edge. These are going to be our hands for our sword and our shield. Next, we have these 4 pieces here, and these pieces are differentiated by the 2 holes drilled on the top and bottom of the veneered edge. These are going to be the upper arms for our fencing friends. Next, we have 2, 4, 6, 8 of these pieces here. These pieces will have 1 hole in the top or bottom of the veneered edge and another hole in the top or bottom of the end grain. These are going to be our legs and feet. So count them again. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8 of those. Now that we've introduced all of our pieces, let's go ahead and talk about our hardware. So I've got my hardware bag right here, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up and talk about the different parts we're going to find inside. The first thing we're taking out is this bag of balloons, and we can go ahead and put this in our tray. We'll keep it off to the side for now. Next, we have a bag with 2 eye hooks. You should also have a bag with 2 screws. Next, we're going to take out a bag that has our washers. And then we should also have a bag with our machine screws, our nuts, and our lock nuts. The last thing you're going to find inside your bag are going to be your zip ties. These are what you're going to use to secure your fencing friends together. Now that we've got all of our materials and hardware introduced, let's go ahead and begin sanding and prepping our pieces so that we can paint them and then get started building. All right, the next step is going to be to sand all of our wood pieces down so we can prep them for paint. So we're going to go ahead and grab our sanding block and our sandpaper. We're going to open up the sandpaper so that the soft edge is facing up, and we're going to place the sanding block right across it like that. Then we're going to fold the two pieces of the sandpaper over the block, and we're ready to start sanding. We're going to go ahead and sand down all of our wood pieces except for our shields, our swords, and our arm control dowels. So we're going to sand our torsos, our upper arms, our hands, our legs and feet, and our base. Let's go ahead and get started now. All right, we've got all our pieces sanded down, so now let's use our rag to clean up all our pieces and wipe away any dust that we just created. All right, we've cleaned up our pieces and now we're ready to get started painting. But before we get started painting, I recommend setting up your fencing friends so you can see how they're going to fit together so you can figure out how you're going to do your pattern or design when you paint them. So we're going to start by placing our torso pieces here in front of us. This little nub is going to be the bottom or the fencing friend's waist. This top part here will be their shoulders. So I'm going to set them so that the waist pieces are pointing towards me. I'm then going to pick up my feet. Just got to get everything organized here. And remember, our leg pieces and our feet pieces are exactly the same. So it doesn't matter which one of these 8 pieces we choose for our legs or our feet, but it does matter the orientation that they go in. So remember, with these pieces, there's one hole in the end grain and there's one hole in the veneered edge. We want to make sure that the end grain is facing up. So we're going to have this hole in the veneered edge close to the top so that it lines up with the waist. And I'm going to place it down just like that. I'm then going to pick up another piece, I'm going to locate the end grain, and I'm going to make sure that those 2 end grain holes are right next to each other, just like that. Next, I can set up my second leg in the exact same way. Once I have legs set up on my first friend, I can go ahead and do the same thing on my other friend. Now that we've set up our fencing friend's legs, let's go ahead and talk about how we're going to orient the arms. So we're going to start with our upper arm pieces. Remember, the upper arm pieces have the 2 pre-drilled holes in the veneered edge, one at the top and one at the bottom. Just like with the legs, we're going to make sure our end grain is facing up. So one of these holes is going to line up at the shoulder, and the other one is essentially going to be our fencing friend's elbow. So we're going to line up one hole at the shoulder, the other one will be down here where his elbow will be, and then we'll do the other side, and then we can set up the same pieces in the same way for our second friend. The last pieces we're going to set up are going to be the fencing friend's hands. So remember, the fencing friend's hands are easily discernible because they have these pre-drilled holes in the center of the veneered edge. They will also have a pre-drilled hole in the front of the end grain. You want to make sure that that hole in the front is facing towards you. So I'm going to go ahead and set up all of my hands so that those holes in the front are facing towards me. Now that I've got my fencing friends all laid out, I can start thinking about how I want to decorate them. So I'm going to go ahead and take some time, plan out my decoration, get these pieces painted, and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my pieces all painted, and you can see I went ahead and laid everything out, how it's all going to fit together again, just to make it easy for myself. We're going to start by setting up our fencing friend's arms and attaching them to the torso. So we're going to do one friend at a time and one set of arms at a time. So I'm going to start here on the right side, and I'm going to pick up an upper arm piece. I'm then going to choose a zip tie, and I'm going to place this zip tie through one of the holes in the veneered edge. Doesn't matter which hole you choose. Just go ahead and stick that zip tie right through. Next, we're going to place the hand onto the zip tie as well. You can see that I have a specific design here on mine, so I want to make sure that it's all going to match up correctly. So I'm just going to double check that the hand design is correct, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide this onto the zip tie. Once you have both pieces onto the zip tie, make sure that the receiving end is facing the right direction, and we're going to go ahead and loop the zip tie together and click it in just a little bit. Now it's important when we attach these two pieces that we leave enough space to allow the arm to move freely. So what we can do is we can use one of our shields as a spacer. Let's go ahead and place the shield between the two pieces, and then we can tighten our zip tie. Once we have it as tight as we can around our shield, we can remove our shield and move on to our next arm. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. We'll place one end of the zip tie through a hole in the upper arm. We're then going to line up our design on the hand, place the zip tie through, make sure that the right end of the receiving end of the zip tie is facing up, and go ahead and click our zip tie. Then we're going to place it down on our table and use our shield as a spacer. Now that we've got the arms on one of our fencing friends set up, let's go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other friend to finish off our arms. Okay, we've got the arms attached to both of our hands on both of our friends, so now it's time to attach the arms to the torso. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with one arm, and we're going to pick up one zip tie. We're going to place the zip tie through the top hole in our upper arm. Now what's important here is you want this end of the zip tie, what's called the receiving end, outside, meaning it's away from the fencing friend's torso. Once I've made sure that that's correctly oriented, I'm going to place this tip of the zip tie through the top of the torso here at the shoulder. I'm then going to pick up his next arm, and I'm going to make sure that the receiving end of my zip tie is facing out away from his torso, and I'm going to place the tip of the zip tie right through that second arm. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and pick up another zip tie. I'm going to place the tip of the first zip tie through the receiving end on my second zip tie. And you need to make sure that it's oriented correctly so when you put it all together, it clicks and locks into place. Oops, looks like I did it upside down, so let's go ahead and flip it around and do it again. Remember, we're listening for that click as it locks. All right, it's starting to click. So what we want to do now that we have it a little bit tight is, again, we're going to use our shield as a spacer, and we're going to stick it right between one arm and the torso. Once we've made that space, we can go ahead and tighten the zip tie down as much as we can. Now we've got the arms attached to our first torso piece. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with our remaining arms and torso. We're going to pick up the first arm, grab a zip tie, place the zip tie through the hole on the upper arm. We're then going to go through the hole here at the top of the torso. And then we'll pick up our next arm. Remember, we want to double check that the receiving end of our zip ties are on the outside of the fencing friend's torso. That's very important. Once you've done that, you're going to pick up your second zip tie, make sure it's oriented correctly so that it clicks into place. And then once you've got it close to tight, go ahead and place your shield in there as a spacer and tighten it down as much as you can. Then you can pull your shield out. And now we have both sets of arms attached to both torsos. You can see we kept it pretty loose so the fencing friend can still move their arms freely. Now the last thing we're going to do for this step is use our scissors to cut away the excess plastic remaining on our zip ties. We're going to try to get as close to the receiving end as possible, and then just go ahead and cut that plastic. Once you've cut all the extra plastic pieces, go ahead and round them up just to make sure we're keeping our area clean. We can get these out of our way. All right, we've got both of our torsos assembled with our arms and our hands, so the next step will be to set up our legs and attach those to the torso as well. All right, now we're ready to set up our legs and attach those to our torsos. So let's go ahead and move these off to the side for now. And we're going to deal with our leg pieces. Remember, the legs and the feet are the same. I have mine designed in a specific way, so I want to make sure that they go together correctly. But if you don't have an intricate design on yours, they're interchangeable. They're all the same piece. So we're going to start with a zip tie, and we're going to place the zip tie through the end grain hole on the leg. Remember, the leg piece has a hole in the end grain and the veneered edge. Make sure you're going through the end grain hole. that's the hole where you see the lines running through the wood. So we're going to go ahead and place the zip tie through. And then we'll place it through one of our legs, or excuse me, one of our feet. Now, just like before, I want to make sure that it all lines up so that I get my design correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and place this through. And then I'm going to hook my zip tie. Once I've got my zip tie a little bit tight, I can place my shield in between, use it as a spacer, and tighten down the rest of the way. And just like that, we've attached one set of legs to our feet. So let's go ahead and do the next one. I'm going to start with my leg, grab another zip tie, go through the end grain hole. Then I'm going to pick up my foot piece, make sure that the pattern lines up. And then take the tip of the zip tie through my foot. Oops, I got my zip tie upside down. And then once it's ready, I can go ahead and hook my zip tie together. Make sure it clicks. And then I can place the shield in between as my spacer. Once I've gotten those tightened down, I can remove the shield, and I've got my second set of legs ready to go. Now let's go ahead and do the exact same thing for the legs for our second fencing friend. All right, I've got both sets of legs set up, so now we're ready to start attaching them to the torso. We're going to be attaching our legs in almost the exact same way that we attached our arms and our hands. So we're going to start with one of our legs, doesn't matter which one, just going to choose one. And just like we had the receiving end of the zip tie oriented on the outside of our fencing friend's elbow on the torso, we want to try to set this up so that the receiving end of the zip tie is towards the back of their leg. It's just going to look nicer that way. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pick up one of our leg pieces with our foot attached, and we're going to place a zip tie through the hole in the veneered edge of the leg. Once you have your zip tie through the leg, you're then going to go through the hole in the fencing friend's torso here at the waist, and then you'll attach your second leg. Remember, I'm double checking that the receiving end of my zip tie is toward the back, and then I'll just place the tip of the zip tie through that hole in the veneered edge of the leg. Once I have my legs on there, just like we did with the arms, we're going to go ahead and pick up another zip tie, and we're going to place that onto the end of this first zip tie. Now again, we want to make sure it's oriented correctly so that it clicks as it locks. Let's go ahead and make sure. Yep, and I can hear it clicking into place. So before I tighten it all the way down, I'm going to go ahead and use my shield as that spacer, place it in between, and then I can tighten my zip tie. Now I've got my legs attached to my first fencing friend, so I'll move them off to the side and do the next one. All right, we've got our legs attached to both of our fencing friends, so just like we did before, let's go ahead and take our scissors and remove the excess plastic from each of our zip ties. We've got all our zip ties cleaned up, so let's go ahead and get rid of these excess plastic pieces to keep our area clean. And now we're ready to move on to the next step, which will be to attach our fencing friends to our base piece. Now we're ready to begin attaching our fencing friends to our base piece. So we're going to go ahead and place our base in front of us, and you'll notice that the base has two sides. One side is flat with 4 pre-drilled holes on either edge. The other side has these insets on each side. The side with these insets is going to be the bottom of our base. So we want to make sure that our base is on our table so that the bottom is down and the top is facing up. We're then going to pick up one of our fencing friends and we're going to lay them face down so that their legs line up between the 4 holes here closest to us. I'm making sure that the back of my fencing friend is facing up. I can tell it's the back because I put the receiving ends of the zip ties at his knees facing up or to the back, and those are facing up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this to the edge of the table, and I'm going to go ahead and grab another zip tie. I'm going to start from the hole here to the farthest to my right, and I'm going to place the zip tie up through that farthest right hole. Oops, I dropped my zip tie. Once you've got it up through the hole, you're then going to feed it through the farthest right leg. Once you've got it through the leg, go ahead and feed it through the very next hole to the left of the leg. And then you're going to pull it down. We can now flip this over and go ahead and click our zip tie into place. Now it's going to be a little bit difficult to get our shield in there as a spacer, so we just want to make sure to leave a little bit of space and not tighten this down all the way. Once I've got it to a good place where the fencing friend can still move, we can go ahead and do our next leg. So make sure to line the foot up between those two holes, grab your next zip tie, and this time we're going to go through the next remaining hole farthest to the right. We go up through the hole, then through the fencing friend's foot, then back down through the remaining hole, and then we can flip the base over again to attach our zip tie. Remember, you want to leave a little bit of space. Don't over tighten the zip ties. And you know what? What happened is I accidentally oriented my zip tie the wrong way, so the receiving end isn't able to receive the tip of my zip tie. That's okay, that happens sometimes, but that just means we're going to have to take it out and flip it over. So I'm going to remove it from that last hole and the foot. I'm going to spin it 180 degrees, and then I'm just going to go right back through the foot and through that last hole. Then I can flip the piece over, and now I should be able to attach it. I've attached it, made sure it's not too tight, my fencing friend can move easily, and now we're ready to do the exact same thing on the other side to attach our remaining fencing friend. All right, we've got both of our fencing friends secured to the base on either side, so now the last step will just be to use our scissors to cut away any excess material on our zip ties. And just like that, our fencing friends are in position and they're just about ready. The next step will be to attach our arm control dowel so we can begin to use our fencing friends. For this next step, we're going to begin to set up the arm control dowels that are going to allow us to control our fencing friends. So I'm done with my scissors. I'm going to move those off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up these 4 dowels. Now you'll notice that these dowels have a pre-drilled hole in one edge. That's the side we're going to be working with. So we're going to start by looking for some of our hardware. For this step, we're going to need our bag of hardware with our machine screws, nuts, and lock nuts. And we're also going to need our bag of washers. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clear some stuff out of my tray because I've got kind of a lot of hardware here to work with and I don't want any of it to get away from me. So let's go ahead and open up our bags. First, I'm going to dump out my washers. Then I'll go ahead and dump out my screws and my nuts. Okay, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up one of my screws and I'm going to place a washer onto the end of the screw, just like this. Once I've done that, I'm going to take the screw and place it through one of the hands on my fencing friends. It doesn't matter which one you start with. I'm going to start with this one closest to me. Now, it is very important that we place this screw from the inside. That's going to be the side closest to our fencing friend's torso, like this. So you're going to place it in, and you may need to kind of screw it in with your fingers to get it set. Once you've got it set, you can use your Phillips head screwdriver and screw it down the rest of the way. All right, I've got the screw set into my arm. I'm double checking that it's on the inside here, closest to the torso. And now I'm going to go ahead and set another washer onto the machine screw. Once I've set the washer, I'm going to go ahead and locate 2 nuts. Now remember, we have 2 different nuts that come in this project. The first are these flat nuts. These are just general nuts. And then we also have these wider nuts with a plastic tip on top that are called lock nuts. For this step, we're going to be using the flat regular nut. So I'm going to put the lock nut back in my tray, and I'm going to screw one nut onto the screw, just using my fingers for now. I'm going to screw it all the way down as tight as I can. And then I'm going to pick up my 5/16 wrench, and I'm going to use the closed end of the wrench, this circular side, to hold the nut in place. Once I've got it secured in place, I'm going to use my screwdriver to tighten the screw down. Once I've got that nice and tight, I'm going to actually go ahead and place a second nut onto the screw. Screw it down as tight as I can get it with my fingers. Then I'm going to, again, use my wrench to hold it in place and go ahead and tighten this screw as tight as I can get it. Now that I've got those nuts attached, I'm going to go ahead and place another washer onto my screw, and then I'm going to place the screw through one of my arm control dowels. So I'm going to locate the side with the hole and place it right through that hole. Now it's important that we make sure that our arm control dowel is parallel with our hand. That's going to give us the best control over the fencing friend. So make sure it's parallel, then go ahead and place another washer. And the last thing we're going to place on there is going to be our lock nut. Remember, these ones are a little bit different. They're wider than the nuts, and they have a little plastic rim here at the top. That's how you know it's the top. So I'm going to make sure that plastic part is facing out, and I'm going to go ahead and screw that on as much as I can onto the machine screw with my fingers. Once I get to a point where I can't screw it down any further, I'm going to have to use my wrench. Now, if you tighten those first two nuts enough, you should be able to just use the wrench to tighten down that lock nut. Remember to make sure the arm is parallel with the arm control dowel, and go ahead and tighten down that nut. Now, if you notice that you're doing this and your screw is spinning, that's probably because these two nuts are not tight enough. But that's okay. If that happens, you can go ahead and hold the lock nut in place with your wrench and tighten the screw using your screwdriver. That's going to be a little tough for me because these nuts are so tight, so I just wanted to show you that, but I'm going to go ahead and tighten this the rest of the way with my wrench. All right, I've got that nice and tight, so now you can see I'm beginning to be able to manipulate my fencing friend's arm so that when I begin using them, I can start to actually fence. Now we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with the fencing friend's other arm. So remember, we're going to start with one of our machine screws. We're going to place a washer onto the screw. We're then going to place that screw through the fencing friend's arm from the inside, closest to the torso. So go ahead and screw it in there. If you need to, you can use your screwdriver to get it in. All right, and once you've got that all the way in there, we're going to place another washer. And then we're going to go ahead and place our first nut. Remember to check that it's one of your flat nuts, not the lock nut, and screw it on with your fingers. Once you've got it screwed all the way down with your fingers, go ahead and grab your wrench, hold it in place, and then use your screwdriver to tighten that screw. Got it nice and tight, so let's go ahead and do our next one. Again, hold it in place with the wrench and tighten that screw. All right, that is super tight. So next, we're going to go ahead and grab another washer, and then we're going to go through our next arm control dowel. Once you've got the dowel on there, double check that it's parallel with your hand. Place another washer. And then you can place a lock nut. Again, check that it's a lock nut. Once you've got it on as tight as you can with your fingers, go ahead and get it the rest of the way using the wrench. And you can use either side of the wrench for this, either the closed end or the open end, whatever's easiest for you. All right, I've got both of my arm control dowels attached. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side to finish off the arm control dowels on my remaining fencing friend. All right, I've got my arm control dowels secured into place on both my fencing friends. So the next step is going to be to attach the shields to the hands on each of my fencing friends. For this next step, we're going to go ahead and attach the shields to the hands of our fencing friends. So it doesn't matter which hand you choose to be your shield hand, you can choose either one. Let's go ahead and locate our shields. And you'll notice that one side of the shield has this little bevel around the hole. The other side is flat. So we want to make sure that we're working from the top, that's that beveled side. And we're going to go ahead and locate our hardware bag with 2 screws inside. Let's go ahead and open that up and dump it into our tray. Once we've opened that up, we can pick up 1 screw and one of our shields, and we're going to go ahead and set that screw into the hole on our shield using our fingers. If you need to use your screwdriver, you can do it that way as well. Once you've done that, you're going to open up your glue, remove the red cap, and you're going to decide which hand you want to be your shield hand. So just taking a look, I'm going to go with this hand here, and I'm just going to place a little bit of glue around the hole on my shield hand. I'm then going to line up the screw with the pre-drilled hole in the shield hand. I'm going to hold my shield in place, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten down that screw. Once you've got the screw almost as tight as you can get it, make sure that your shield is pointing straight up and down, and then go ahead and tighten it down the rest of the way. All right, we've got 1 shield in place, so let's go ahead and do the exact same thing with our other fencing friend. We're going to pick up our shield, place the screw in from that beveled side. We're then going to determine which hand we want our shield on. I'm going to go with this one here, place a little bit of glue. Then I'm going to place the screw into that hole, hold my shield in place, and tighten down that screw. Once I've got it down almost as tight as I can get, make sure my shield is lined up properly, and then finish it off. You want your shield nice and tight to the point where it's not going to move around, and then once the glue dries, it'll be stuck in place. So now we have both of our shields attached. Let's go ahead and wipe up any excess glue that may have been spilling out. And now we're going to go ahead and set up the eye hooks at the top of our fencing friends where we can attach our balloons later when we do our activity. For this next step, we're going to be attaching eye hooks to the top of our fencing friends. These eye hooks are where we're going to secure our balloons when we do our activity. So let's go ahead and locate our last hardware bag, and we're going to dump out our eye hooks. The eye hooks have 2 sides. One side has this little ring at the top, and the other side has a pointed bottom. We're going to make sure that that pointed side is going down into the torso. So I'm going to start with one fencing friend, and I'm going to locate the pre-drilled hole in the center and the top of the torso. I'm then going to place the eye hook in with my fingers and go ahead and begin to screw it down. Once you've got it screwed into place, make sure that the ring on the eye hook is facing forward, and then we can go ahead and do our next one. All right, we've got both of our eye hooks secured, so now the last step is going to be to attach our swords, and then we can set some balloons into those eye hooks and begin to play with our fencing friends. Okay, now we're ready to set up our swords so we can finish off our fencing friends. Now I have my 2 swords here, and the swords are just going to fit into the pre-drilled holes on the other hand of our fencing friend. So it's super simple. You're just going to locate the flat edge of the sword. We're going to make sure the pointy end is sticking out, and we're going to locate that hole, and then just go ahead and slide the sword into that hole until it fits into place. Once you've done that, go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Now we have both of our swords attached, so the last step is going to be to set up our balloons so we can begin to play with our fencing friends. Alright, so now we're ready to set up our balloons, attach them to our eye hooks, and then we can play with our fencing friends. So I have a bag of balloons here. I should have about 20 in this bag, which means I can play a few different times. And I'll go ahead and take out one balloon for each fencing friend. I'm then going to blow the balloon up using my mouth. Once you've got the balloon filled up, go ahead and tie a knot in the end. Once you've got that knot tied, you're going to pick up one of your fencing friends and you're going to place the knotted end of the balloon through the ring in the eye hook. So just kind of push it through. Once it's through, you can grab it and pull it tight through that hole. Once you've got one balloon in there, go ahead and do the same thing with your other balloon. All right, I've got both of my balloons set in there, so now I'm ready to play. The object of the game is to pop the other player's balloon before your balloon gets popped. So let's get ready to play. All right, I had a super fun time building this and playing Fencing Friends today. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to build this with me on Elemental Hardware Enrichment, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.